Okay, I'm sorry. This is the most cut and dry part of this for me.
I think this was a moment our jaws hit the floor.
If she was in black briefs and basically mostly covered, she was fucking lying.
Right. This is a lie. Well. Back together again for another huge episode on the Justin Baldoni versus Blake Lively of it all.
You guys, we had Blake's case against Justin, her legal complaint that was filed right before Christmas. Then we had Justin's case against the New York Times filed around January 4th, January 5th. On January 16th, Justin Baldoni filed his full lawsuit against Blake Lively. I want to ground everyone, okay, in how we're approaching this episode. We went through all of the allegations against Justin Baldoni in Blake's complaint. We also went through everything Justin Baldoni said in his lawsuit with the New York Times. When we went through both of these lawsuits, there was a lot in Blake's complaint that was not addressed in Justin's lawsuit against the New York Times.
Right, and I remember us saying, he doesn't address certain things in here.
Right, exactly. And we took Blake's words in her complaint at face value. We assumed that this complaint was not filled with bold-faced lies.
Right.
This could have been where we made a grave error.
Yeah, I think it's time to give the defense, or Justin Baldoni in this case, his day in court.
His absolute fair day in court. His right as an American.
So one thing really quick, he's suing Blake and Ryan for $400 million.
I think it's really important to have some perspective on...
That's nothing. That's a drop in the bucket.
I think it's important to have some perspective on the fact that that's not nothing for them.
Right.
Per Google, their net worth is around $350 million. He is ostensibly going after their entire fortune.
Yeah, I think that is something critical to note here, because Wayfair Studios and the billionaire backing that they have are really putting the full force of their weight behind this case, and they really feel like they will be vindicated. And I think them choosing to sue Blake and Ryan for that much money shows that.
Absolutely. He has the billionaire backer, and they want to go to trial. They do not want a settlement. They want all the facts of this laid bare for a jury of their peers to make a decision, and they are going for that full amount. They're also, Chandler, they're not just going for $400 million. So this is at the end of the lawsuit. They're also going for an award of money for mental pain and anguish beyond the $400 million. I mean, Blake Lively, she might be interning for us once this is all over.
Yeah, Blake, you can send your resume to hello at no. After reading these documents, just to take a second before we really dive headfirst into everything, I want them to have their day in court, because there is just so much here. You can't look away from it. It is irrefutable.
And it is shocking. So let's get to the heart of the matter, but this is another thing I want to say. We took Blake's words at face value, and we could have been wrong there. And if we were wrong, we will admit it. We're not going to just dig our heels in because we had a different opinion 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we could have erred with some of our snap judgments, but I think she alleged sexual harassment that was very serious. And I think we took that seriously. We weren't going to flippantly, deny that or say, where's the proof?
Right.
But I think now that we have this evidence before us, those accusations are just truly being called into question to the point where I might even be Team Justin.
Well, let's just dig in and see where we land, okay? I think that one of the great things about this lawsuit is it's written really like a thriller. It is so captivating.
I'm sorry, John Grisham. I'm trying to get through, your 36th novel, as I was falling asleep last night. But when you sent me this, I was wide awake.
No, Stephen King wishes he had the prowess with a pen that this attorney has.
I think too, usually when you're reading a legal document, there's so many just mumbo jumbo and parentheses. I was literally walking on the subway platform reading this, cover to cover.
No, I started it last night at 9:30 p.m. because we had a different condensed outline we were going to go through. But I was like, I just want to read more of the actual lawsuit. And so I started reading the lawsuit. I read it until 1 a.m. last night. I read the whole thing. And it was so juicy. So what we're doing, everyone, is we're going to take you through this lawsuit. We've condensed a lot of it to make it way more digestible, to move quicker through the action. But we're going to let you hear in Justin Baldoni's attorney's own words what exactly happened between Justin and Blake.
Another thing really quick, I think we're going to also try to not repeat information we've already discussed of like Justin refuting things. Like I think we're going to try to bring as much of the freshest, most juicy parts of this to this episode and not repeat a bunch of stuff you've already heard before.
Right, exactly, Chandler. So we're not going to go over how the New York Times got it wrong. I think that we're good there. We're not going to go over the drama with the PR teams. We're really just going to get to the heart of what Justin said happened between him and Blake on the set of It Ends With Us.
Correct.
So without further ado, the following is not a story plaintiffs ever wish to tell.
Unfortunately, defendant Blake Lively has unequivocally left them with no choice.
Had Blake Lively chosen to merely, and by the way, everyone, this is the legal language in the lawsuit, okay?
Yeah, this isn't just, our spin.
This is not our dramatization. We are reading the actual words. Had Lively chosen to merely ride out the self-inflicted press catastrophe she faced in August 2024, the public would have likely moved on and never known the truth about her. They would have never known that she deliberately and systematically robbed plaintiffs Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer Studios of their movie. No one except the parties involved would have known that she used threats and extortion to relegate the colleagues she once highly praised to a basement to sit out their own premiere, while she enjoyed the spotlight of a premiere and after party that was co-financed by both Wayfarer and Sony. Wayfarer, everyone, is the studio that Justin is a co-founder of, and obviously Sony is Sony. She would have gotten away with these things and more because Baldoni, focused entirely on seeing the film succeed, would have held his tongue as he had through the year and a half that Lively tormented him, his family, and his partners.
But Lively could not tolerate her publicly tainted image for even a moment, and further could not accept that it was entirely of her own making. She needed a scapegoat. And rather than admit and take accountability for her own mishaps, she chose to blame plaintiffs in a malicious and unforgivably public manner. When she and Reynolds could not force Baldoni and Wayfarer to read a statement she and her representatives prepared, extorting them to, quote, take accountability in defense of Lively's actions, she lay in wait for months, preparing to publicly attack Baldoni by falsely claiming that he had sexually harassed her.
I just want to give some context here really quick. What they're saying is that when all of the negativity was coming out in the press about her and the way she was promoting the film, what she wanted was she wanted Wayfarer and Justin. She wanted Justin and, his production company to come out and take responsibility for problems on the set. Okay. And she had already laid the groundwork for there to be allegations of sexual harassment and him fat shaming her at this time. So basically she wanted Justin to admit to wrongdoing and sins that he says he never committed, so that she wouldn't have this bad press for promoting her hair and her alcohol line. It really defies description how evil this is. And so anyway, I just wanted to ground everyone in what they meant by extorting them to take accountability in defense of Lively's actions.
And what we're reading here with these first few segments are like kind of the thesis of his lawsuit.
Right.
Like, this is why, this is what she did.
Right. This is the thesis. And then we're going to get to the actual evidence, which is just so juicy.
Lively stole Wayfarer's movie, hijacked Wayfarer's premiere, destroyed plaintiffs' personal and professional reputations and livelihood, and aimed to drive plaintiffs out of business entirely. It further appears that Lively worked for months with the equally powerful New York Times to prepare a false and damaging narrative to deploy against plaintiffs. Not surprisingly, Lively prepared an administrative complaint with the Civil Rights Department in California, the CRD complaint is what it's known by, in an attempt to use the litigation privilege to shield her behind-the-scenes conspiracy with the New York Times. But the CRD complaint was filed only after defendants spent months feeding falsehoods to the New York Times, intending that they be disseminated to damage plaintiffs.
Lively delivered the CRD complaint to plaintiffs over the Christmas holiday. And then rather than promptly file a lawsuit, she leaked the typically private CRD complaint to the public, utilizing the New York Times as a conduit for her revenge. The CRD complaint, as well as what was published in the New York Times, was rife with lies and doctored evidence. Lively then waited 11 days to file against plaintiffs in what seemed to be a desperate move after the public questioned why she had never filed a lawsuit. Lively never intended to file a lawsuit because that would have triggered plaintiffs' right to discovery. jury, including obtaining evidence and deposing Lively under oath. By the time Lively actually filed the suit against Baldoni, the damage to Justin was done by virtue of Lively's months of colluding with the New York Times on a false and malicious narrative, unshielded by any privilege. Make no mistake, these actions were deliberate.
In summation, basically, Blake wanted to taint the waters, but she didn't want to actually go to trial or have any type of proper process or due process, I guess you could say, with this case. She wanted to just completely control the narrative and make Justin Baldoni out to be the bad guy in the court of public opinion.
Destroy his life and career, and not in a way that he could defend himself in an actual court of law.
Right.
Which is insanity.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it's just very different. Filing a complaint and filing a lawsuit are very different things. And it is pretty wild, the idea that she never actually intended for it to become a lawsuit. All it was intended to do was destroy Justin and exonerate herself.
Right.
So now let's just start from the beginning. Blake and Justin, she gets cast as Lily, and let's get to how things unfolded and how really their relationship progressed. And I think what's important in what we're about to hear is that Blake and Justin really got along and they had a close relationship. So on or about December 31st, 2022, Blake Lively agreed to take the role of Lily Bloom. As part of the subsequent negotiations, Lively was granted an executive producer credit, a title often given to talent of her stature. Lively had requested to be a producer, but Wayfarer and Sony demurred, given that such a title would not accurately reflect the role she was asked to play in the production. So I guess executive producer is more kind of nominal, like you help out.
Yeah.
But producer is, you were instrumental in securing the funding and making sure this movie was made. It's a much bigger title.
Yeah, I feel like I'm learning so much about the movie making process and like these titles and what it really means now when the credits roll. It's been very interesting to me. But moving on, in the beginning, it appeared that Blake and Justin would have a positive, collaborative, creative partnership. They worked closely on the early days of the film, trading ideas about, who would fill key roles in the film's cast and crew. And their relationship grew close. They shared stories and pictures of their lives, commiserated over family illness, exchanged jokes and memes.
They were tight. And Blake was comfortable enough to make like a dirty joke to Justin. So here is one text message between Blake and Justin.
So Justin, they're talking about something, about making the movie, whatever. Justin says, "I like sentimental Blake." Blake responds, "Never met her." Justin then responds, "I also like asshole Blake. Don't worry." And then he says, "Okay, good night." And then Blake responds and she says, "I've met her. So have my suppositories. Good night."
It is so weird to make a joke about your actual anus. Like, is that, I feel, I don't even want to say that on this podcast. Am I being prudish?
This is not a joke I would make. I consider myself to be a person who makes jokes. And this is really not a joke that I would make. I'm not into butthole jokes, personally.
Okay, so they're tight. They're talking this way with each other. And what Justin notices is that Blake is starting to try to assert control over the film virtually immediately after signing on.
Right. So Blake basically inserts herself into the production process in ways that are just beyond the scope that she should technically have, like, with her contract.
As an actress, yeah.
So, for example, she just decides and insists that she should have creative control over her character's wardrobe. And they note that, lead actors are sometimes granted approval over their character's general look, but generally do not receive full control over wardrobe decisions without input from the directors or producers. What may seem like an innocuous request can, in fact, have monumental impact on a film production. I'll just add a little bit of color from my own life. Like in my day job, at times I'll shoot a commercial, and because I'm on the creative team, in charge of the concept, it is literally my job and mine and my team's job to come up with the styling brief. Say, well, this is what we want people to wear, and then you send that to a stylist, someone who's professionally trained to source clothing and sort of create this look. And then the talent, the people who are literally going to be wearing the clothes, show up and just try them on.
Right.
So you can see, I've literally been in fittings, and it's just, and obviously that's on a different scale to what Blake Lively does, but it's just really not the way the process works. And a takeaway I have from reading all this is just Blake Lively has such a fundamental issue with following correct process when it comes to making movies, and she just doesn't respect it at all.
I think it's an almost maniacal need to have full control over everything, and also an entitlement to disregard normal hierarchies that are there for a reason, right? They keep things efficient, they keep the train on the tracks, and they also allow the director and the stylist to enact their vision, to have it actually come to life, because fashion and the visual is such a big part of the storytelling process. Hence why we were all so disturbed by her outfits in this movie, and it completely took us out of the film.
Absolutely, Lauren. It fully took us out of, what this character was or what we thought it should be. It's based on a 23-year-old who's fresh out of college, or who's, recently graduated, very young. And so I think when you get into like some of the reports in here about how she said, she can afford $5,000 shoes, she has money. I'm sorry, I don't know any person who's freshly graduated who is opening up their own business who can also afford $5,000 shoes, who doesn't have a trust fund. And this is another thing we find out in here. Blake did not even read the book.
We'll get to that. But yes, you're right. It was supposed to be about a 23-year-old girl who's fresh out of college starting a business. The idea that she could afford $5,000 shoes, a Valentino tote, all these items from Blake Lively, an A-list actress worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The idea that there would be overlap between Blake and Lily's wardrobe is laughable. Anyway, so ignoring the director's vision for her character and disposing of the weeks of effort and creativity spent by the wardrobe team on shopping and carefully crafting her wardrobe, Lively sent hundreds of images to the film's costume designer, including into the late hours of the evening, depicting the style of wardrobe she wanted for the character. The costume designer had to reshop Blake's wardrobe, far exceeding the allocated budget and diverting time and resources, while also preparing wardrobes for the rest of the cast. At one point, Lively insisted that her character had money and could afford $5,000 shoes. Again, she hasn't read the book, but she knows that her character has money.
I mean, also, I just want to say, like, $5,000 shoes, that's a fuck ton of money to spend on shoes. That's not even like, oh, this is like I want to spend a quarter of that on my wedding shoes.
I think that $5,000, like, on some level, it's like, oh, maybe she had one handbag or she had one piece of jewelry that was like her big present. But you have to have a certain level of wealth to be dropping $5,000 on a pair of shoes that were going to get beat up.
Yes.
Great point, Chandler. So Lively insisted that she could afford these $5,000 shoes, despite being a fledgling small business owner, her character. This forced Baldoni to rethink the entire script that had been in the works for well over a year and was approved by Sony and Wayfair. The wardrobe budget ballooned.
Additionally, a little bit, more detail here about her, behavior during wardrobe. She insisted that the costume department pack up wardrobe and deliver it to her personal residence, loading the wardrobe department on trucks and delivering the contents to Lively's home in the middle of congested Manhattan for fittings.
I'm sorry, we just need to discuss this. Her home was 15 minutes away from where they had all the wardrobe set up in Manhattan. 15 minutes. And instead, she said, no, I want the entire team to load all of this onto huge trucks and bring it to my apartment at considerable time and expense of all these professionals. And also, it's just like, it's not even about money. It's just about, it's rude. It's rude to these people.
It's 100% rude. Also, just to like set the scene, everybody, just with my own small amount of experience here, like when you go to a fitting, there are racks and racks and racks of clothing. Like, we're not just talking about one clothing rack and they're like, let's try this all on. We're talking about like 8 to 10 clothing racks of things that a stylist has sourced. And so it's a huge ask to have that literally shuttled to her apartment. Requests of this nature are typically made during contract negotiations. Since Lively made no such request, this added expense was not included in the budget. Blake, who had a greater obligation to the studios as an executive producer, paid no heed to budget constraints, let alone the months of planning that had already been completed. So
yeah, it's the type of request that's so extreme that it's like, well, this would have had to have been in your contract at the beginning for us to do this for you. And also, if you want to be a producer, you want to make the film more efficient, you're going to help this film cross the finish line and be on budget. Why are you making it more expensive and less efficient?
I think what we'll see as we go through these things is it just was not about the bigger picture to Blake. It was, and what I really get from this is that I think it was about the bigger picture to Justin, but it was not about the bigger picture to Blake. It was about like, this was her movie, her control. This is what she wanted every step of the way.
I think it goes beyond it not being about the film. It just is about her. It's just what she wants. It's her convenience. It's just, everything is about Blake. And this, I mean, it even goes so far as to the movie poster, which she had him expunged from. She doesn't even get, a film by Justin Baldoni. She has that taken off. And then if you look at it, it's just a photo of her, a huge ass photo of her. Honestly, it is so narcissistic. I just can't.
I said this the other day when we were recording, but all of this information about her is causing me to have a personal faith crisis with Taylor Swift.
I can't believe you're going here, but we need to go here.
And I just have to say that. I don't know where it will go, where it ends. I don't know where this ends with us as in Taylor Swift and I.
It's really scary because as hardcore Swifties, it's actually terrifying that Blake Lively would be Taylor Swift's best friend. That Taylor wouldn't be able to suss out that this is Blake's character and that she would want to be so close to someone so atrocious.
Lauren, I have to like disassociate while you talk because it's just, you know, it's so hard to bear and to fathom. And, you know, you either live in the world where Taylor knows who she is and it doesn't matter, or you live in the world where Taylor's been duped.
Or we have been duped. About who Taylor is. The worst world of all. But let's move forward. It's 2025.
2025 is upon us.
We are all ready to get in shape, feel good.
And to use Mom's words, hit the ground running.
Hit the ground running on our self-improvement. And let's start with getting a little more protein in. How about that?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
The easiest way to consume more protein is through using Clean Simple Eats, either their gorgeous protein powders, which taste like a Wendy's Frosty when blended with just ice and water. It's impeccable.
And if you're not in the mood for a protein shake, their clear protein are delicious. I love it with a lot of ice. My favorite flavor is the orange.
I love the prickly pear. I'm such a huge fan of the clear protein. Courtney has cases always at the ready now at her house. She's a huge fan. You guys, you have to go to cleansimpleeats.com. Check out the clear protein. Check out their protein powders. Let's put on some muscle. Let's get stronger.
Let's get stronger together, 2025.
Hashtag stronger together, Chandler. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, go to cleansimpleeats.com. Use code POPAPOLOGIST for 10% off. That's cleansimpleeats.com. Code POPAPOLOGIST for 10% off. It's 2025, and a lot of us are doing dry January. But I have thought of a genius loophole, okay? If anyone needs to let out some steam.
Please tell me. I'm dying to know this genius secret you have.
It's half an early bird CBD gummy, or a whole if you really want to get crazy. These gummies, they make you feel a little warm. They make you feel a little melty. They just slap, sister.
These gummies are incredible. I reach for them over a glass of wine. They're just the perfect way to take the edge off.
You guys, you have to try Early Bird CBD gummies. We're all trying to drink less alcohol, be healthier, and this is a great way of still getting to have your fun in the process. Go to earlybirdcbd.com. Use code POP20 for 20% off. That is a lot, everyone.
Also, don't forget they have the nifty travel packs. So, you know, if you're new to Early Bird CBD and you just want to give it a try, you can pick up the travel packs to see what you like.
earlybirdcbd.com. Use code POP20 for 20% off. So in an effort to maintain harmony at the start of their working relationship and to avoid further delays caused by wardrobe conflicts, Justin and the studio reluctantly ceded full control to Blake over her wardrobe. This concession quickly proved regrettable. On the first day of principal photography, paparazzi captured and published photos of Lively in character wearing her hand-picked wardrobe. If we can all remember, the 2 pairs of pants, the huge jacket, the crop top, and of course, the beanie, the famous beanie, the infamous beanie.
It justifies the skin, Lauren.
Yeah, it just washes the effort off the look for sure. That's exactly what I thought. I was like, I want to check out this girl. I mean, Blake looked like a complete clown as Lily Bloom.
It was a clown outfit. So obviously, yeah, paparazzi captured and published these photos. The internet, you know, is set on fire by it, and people are criticizing her. And so what happens, according to Baldoni's lawsuit, is that he approached Blake in her trailer to discuss necessary wardrobe adjustments and, you know, sort of resetting their relationship to assert his role as director and his need to have approval over her wardrobe. This conversation, while professional, took considerable time and was later grossly misrepresented in Lively's CRD complaint, which falsely characterized the exchange as a lengthy outburst that delayed filming and caused crew to wait for hours while Baldoni cried in Lively's dressing room.
So if we'll all remember, Blake said that he was crying that she basically didn't look hot enough. And as 2 women, this really bothered me. The idea that he was so upset that her body and physical appearance was not up to his standards to the point where he's crying in her dressing room. I was up in arms for this woman.
I had a different opinion. I was like, there's no way that he was literally crying about how she didn't look hot enough. I thought it was, you know, he's upset because the film that he's worked so hard on is like already receiving all this negative backlash. It's just starting off on the wrong foot.
Yeah, and it's it's like we knew these outfits were ugly.
Yes.
We knew ceding control to her was costing us all this money, and it was making the film a lot worse, and we were correct.
Right.
The internet's reaction is proving this right.
So what Justin's lawsuit says is that the conversation did not take hours, and any length of time it took was not because Baldoni, quote, cried for hours. In truth, rather than take heed of the concerns of the film's distributor and director, Lively took this time, among other things, to suggest to Justin that he was being, quote, gaslit by Sony, Jamie Heath, and the other producer, and tried to convince him to let her continue to take the helm. Baldoni did briefly become emotional during the conversation, but only in response to what he believed was a genuine compliment from Lively, praising his work as a director and actor. So it sounds like she was kind of manipulating him.
That's what it says. It says that in hindsight, this was part and parcel of the ongoing pattern of manipulation and gaslighting by Blake Lively, intended to continue to allow her autonomy over her wardrobe.
I want to read the footnote on this page because I think it is super juicy.
Okay.
Lively herself had voiced insecurities about the public perception of her casting as Lily Bloom. Lily is described as a 23-year-old young woman and recent college graduate within the first few pages of the book, which Lively would have known had she read the book before production, despite having admitted to ordering a copy months before, which remarkably she ordered only after she had committed to the role on December 20th, 2022. That aside, when Lively learned that Lily was a decade plus younger than herself in the book, Lively asked that the author Colleen Hoover explain in her public casting announcement that they had decided to age up the book's characters for the film. Hoover didn't put the statement out in the way Lively requested, and Blake was not happy about this.
You know what bothers me about this is this was a hugely popular book. I remember reading it in college. A lot of people love Colleen Hoover, love this book. It would have not been difficult to get another A-list actress in an appropriate age range to play this character. I think it was not accidental that Lily was supposed to be fresh out of college.
Yeah.
I think that being young, being impressionable, really, maybe not having the wisdom that comes from being in your mid-30s was part of what allowed Lily to get, entrapped with an abuser.
Yeah.
I think it's so frustrating that the role went to Blake, who then proceeded to only really care about how she appeared in it and didn't even care enough about the role to read the actual book. I mean, that to me is inexcusable.
Yeah, there's just like a fundamental thing about acting. I'm not an actor, but you're supposed to become the role versus like force your own experience and who you are into the role.
Yeah, and you're supposed to want to know as much about your character as possible. So for it not even to interest you to read the primary text.
To not read the book before you accept the role is pretty crazy to me. I mean, we're talking about, you guys, like an airport book, like a beach read.
Completely.
Another example of Blake taking control happens in the pre-production stage. She explains to Justin that, directors had never permitted her to write scenes for the movie she acted in or gave her writing credits. They had at times made her hand scribble her suggestions for lines so that they could not be traced to her. So like literally, having her write it in so that nobody knew that Blake wrote that. She boasted that she had even written for Ryan's movies. Blake then asked if she could take a pass writing the rooftop scene in It Ends With Us, which is where Ryle and Lily first meet. It's a pivotal scene, beloved by book fans, and it's critical for setting the tone of the movie. So Justin was kind of reluctant to allow her to rewrite this key scene, but he felt the need to allow her to rewrite the scene and agreed to take a look at what she put together.
I just feel like it would have been like Rachel McAdams asking like the director of The Notebook to be like, can I rewrite the scene? Is it possible? Can I take a pass at the scene when Allie and Noah reconnect in the rain? I think I could put my own spin on it.
I like what you've done here with If You're a Bird, I'm a Bird, but I just want to take a stab.
Exactly. I mean, it's like, I understand why these directors were like, no, I'm not sending you the file, bitch. Like,
literally.
back down. Good for these directors. I want to know their names. I want to salute them publicly.
Wow, beautiful. Okay, so the draft of the rooftop scene that Lively sent Justin dramatically differed from what had been written originally. And he was very hesitant about many of the changes, but he thanked Blake for her passion, and he told her that the scene would likely end up being somewhere in the middle of, what she had written and what was originally written.
So I think what's so interesting about this is her reaction, because apparently she was stung by his exceedingly mild resistance. So he barely pushes back at all. He says, thank you for your passion. It'll be somewhere in the middle. This is not enough for her. Lively went silent for multiple days. This is when it's giving personality disorder to me. This is when this is like getting psychotic.
Yeah.
So later she confirms in a text that this did not feel great for her or her husband or her mega celebrity friend. Okay. And it didn't feel good to have her passion praised rather than her specific contribution. In this, Lively was referring to an earlier meeting where Blake summoned Justin to her New York penthouse, where he was greeted by Ryan Reynolds, who launched into enthusiastic praise for Blake's version of the rooftop scene. Hours later, as the meeting was ending, a famous and famously close friend of Reynolds and Lively walked into the room and similarly began praising Lively's script. Baldoni understood the subtext. He needed to comply with Lively's direction for the script. I don't know, you guys. This is just...
It's just a lot. I think this is giving me new understanding for maybe the moments where Taylor was crying on the Eras tour, where we see a tear roll down her face.
No, absolutely. After she sings Lover, and then the light goes down, and there's a famous video of her shedding a tear.
It's not about the relationships, she had.
It's not about her dissolution with Joe Alwyn. It is about the idea that Blake's passion was praised and not her specific contribution. And maybe she would not, when It Ends With Us premiered, get to see Blake's version of the rooftop scene. I mean, that would be horrible.
Horrible. Later on, after this meeting, Justin felt obliged to text Blake and say that he had liked her pages and that he hadn't needed Reynolds and her mega celebrity friend, aka Taylor, to pressure him. And this is when we get the infamous Dragon's text message. I think we need to do a dramatic reading.
Okay, this is what's so crazy, everyone. By the way, we just need to say that Justin will send her like 3 sentences and she will send back essays.
Yeah.
It is so intense.
It's pretty odious.
Yes.
So I'll be Justin. He's responding to something else. He says, "Great. Also, was working on Rooftop scene today. I really love what you did. It really does help a lot. Makes it so much more fun and interesting. And I would have felt that way without Ryan and Taylor. Winky face. You really are a talent across the board. Really excited and grateful to do this together."
I mean, one thing to say is you understand how these monsters are created. The way he's like, you really are a talent across the board.
It's like,
so excited and grateful to do this together. You understand how in her mind a little bit, she became the monster that she seems to be.
Fault.
And it's not his fault, but I think when you have everyone kissing your ass all the time, it's hard not to buy the bullshit.
Absolutely. And I think when no one can say no to you, and if they're going to even lightly say no or push back, then they have to sandwich it with 100 million compliments.
Right. Okay, so this is how she responds to his text message. That's very appreciated. It means a lot. I'm deeply inspired by the film we're going to make outside of the success of this book. We have such an opportunity to not only surprise people who love the book, but reach an even bigger audience by making an undeniably dynamic and also commercial film with a protagonist who always wears 2 pairs of pants. The moment that excited, I just added the last part, sorry. The moment that excited me the most the other day was when you said, "You're not funny." She tells him that he's going to kill that rooftop scene, and she says, "Please no, I trust that on the day you got me, and I hope you trust that I've got you if you want it." Okay, so Justin sends her a very nice text, seems to be diplomatic, trying to appease her, and he's basically like, "Thanks for your work on the rooftop scene today. I really love what you did. It does help a lot, makes it so much more fun and interesting, and I would have felt that way without Ryan and Taylor, winky face. You really are a talent across the board, excited and grateful to do this together." So he's basically placating her, right? Makes it so much more fun and interesting. She sends back an essay, okay, about how appreciated that is and how they're gonna kill this scene together, with that they're in it together. She wants him to win. And then there's that is a whole page. And then there's 2 more pages of text. And this is where he talks about Taylor. So she says, it's redacted, so we can just assume this is Taylor Swift. But she says, "As for Taylor and Ryan, I'm the luckiest motherfucker on the planet to have them as my dance moms level stage moms. They are embarrassingly effusive. That said, they're also my most trusted partners and the people I go to with anything creative I touch. and I'm the person they each go to first. That reciprocal creativity and support has been one of my life's greatest and most fulfilling gifts. When they loved and signed off on the pages, I felt good to send them to you. They asked what you thought specifically after. They checked in so many times. I told them that you laughed a bunch and said it's probably a blend, but you appreciate my passion so much, which of course didn't feel great for me. Or them, to have my passion be praised instead of any specific contribution, or even just that you didn't like the pages, which was fine also. Oh my gosh, it continues. So I think they wanted you and me to see how they felt about the work because they've been by my side for so many experiences where I've been overlooked. I mean, should I read all of this?
I'll take it off your hands.
Please.
I spoke to you about this when we first met. They've watched me handwrite scripts because the director is too afraid to send the FDX file, yet he scans and has someone hand type all 120 pages of my pencil rewrites. They've watched me be hired as a writer and paid a significant fee for it, but on the condition that I never ask for credit, which I could give a shit about. It's more the principle of the dynamics at play. They've watched the other side of it too, where I'm told at signing that I'm wanted as a true collaborator, but once we get to work, I'm really just wanted as a yes man, audience, and actor. She goes on to say, like, they're just both Ryan and Taylor absolute titans. They root for me, blah, blah, blah.
Everyone respects them. They want, they respect them as writers.
So then we get the, last bit, which is about the dragons, Khaleesi. She says, if you ever get around to watching Game of Thrones, you'll appreciate that I'm Khaleesi. And like her, I happen to have a few dragons. For better or worse, but usually for better. Because my dragons also protect those I fight for. So really, we all benefit from those gorgeous monsters of mine. You will too, I can promise you.
So Taylor Swift is a gorgeous monster who she's threatening him with.
This is literally a reputation-coded text. 100%.
Absolutely. It's Who's Afraid of Little Old Me before TTPD came out.
And I think this is a threat. It's a thinly veiled, it's wrapped up in a lot of other, manipulative, context. But it's a little bit of a threat. I have these monsters.
And she knows that even though it's they're going to fight for us, she knows that there's also some subtext there that's very real. That means they will fight against you and destroy you.
Right.
If, they're my monsters.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So it says that her being difficult proved to become a gross understatement. So though he allowed her to make some revisions to that rooftop scene, they became alarmed by how difficult she became. They said the frequency of her revisions alarmed the producers, directors, and studio, who anticipated that her interference would persist every day of the shoot, quote, and disrupt the carefully planned production schedule. Each shooting day was intricately scheduled long in advance, and Lively's constant changes placed significant stress on the production crew, not to mention financial strain on Wayfarer.
I think, too, this is the if you give a mouse a cookie story, the classic allegory of if you give a mouse a cookie. Mm-hmm. If you give Blake Lively a little bit of control, she's going to want to take all of it. This is what happens throughout this, allegedly throughout this entire story. And this rooftop scene is really the beginning of that. It starts with the wardrobe, then it goes to the rooftop scene, and then it just fully spirals and snowballs from there.
Mm-hmm. And this text from the producer is very telling. The producer says, "Are you listening to this? She's fixing the script. I think Angie's advice was actually wrong. Blake is now directing the movie. This is bad." Jamie Heath says, "I'm listening. Talking through it is better than not. Seeing what's possible as long as any decision is done with approval." And the producer responds, "Not for something that was already intimately planned. This will be every day of the shoot." So basically they're just bemoaning.
Yeah. And I can't remember if I said this earlier, but I think it bears repeating. This is just another example of where Blake really doesn't respect the filmmaking process and the people whose job it is, the screenwriters, to actually craft the film. And if you'll remember, Justin Baldoni had been working on this for years prior, and then Blake comes in, cast as talent here, and then decides to make it her movie. And from top to bottom, control it.
And it just shows an entitlement that really defies description.
Yeah.
They then get into the fact that Blake, during promotion of the film, she lets it slip to a reporter on the red carpet that Ryan had actually tweaked the rooftop scene.
I mean, she kind of does. I don't even think she lets it slip, really. I think she kind of brags about it. And
totally
then she's like,
does.
"Oh, you're the only person that knows that now." I mean, it's careless the way she doesn't, the way she just says it.
And it's so thoughtless to the actual screenwriter who's credited for writing this and who very graciously says, "If there were little flourishes that I did not write and those came from Ryan, I think that's wonderful." Justin responds as well in a positive way about Ryan publicly. Then Sony behind the scenes is sending frantic emails like Ryan Reynolds, who is in no way legally contracted to work on this film whatsoever.
Or credited, because I think they're trying to make sure, like, hey, do we need to cover ourselves in case we get sued because he worked on this and we didn't pay him? Or, you know, I don't know. That would be my inference from that.
No, that's exactly what's happening. So it's just complete chaos.
Yeah.
Then we get to the moment where things really, I think, hit the fan. Shit hits the fan here.
I think that this is the first moment where there's big time tension between Blake and Justin.
Like, this whole time they've been chummy, getting along,
Yeah.
and she's been extremely overbearing and entitled, but he's been placating her.
Kowtowing, you know, like, it's fine, we're talking through it, you know, like, I think they're just like trying to mitigate. And then, like, this is the first blow up that we see.
So apparently Blake introduced Justin to her trainer, and Justin, there's text messages with the trainer kind of showing that this, you know, they have a good relationship. To be honest, I don't know why these text messages are in these exact messages, because they're just about like his workout routine.
Yeah, and like the whole issue here is that allegedly.
Oh, I know why.
Why?
Because what these text messages are doing is so Don the trainer is saying how not to injure his back during the program. So he's saying stay out of lumbar extension, your low back should not arch. I think they're basically corroborating the fact that he has back problems.
Oh yeah.
And that is why he asked for Blake's weight.
Right. I think what I would like to see, if there is text message evidence of it, is how he asked about it. Because I think there's some tact that needs to happen there, and maybe that tact wasn't exercised or wasn't used. I think it's interesting that we don't have a message about asking about Blake's weight.
Yeah.
Maybe that happened over the phone. I don't know.
We don't know, and it doesn't explicitly say. But what happened is that I think that the trainer tried to get her weight from Blake in order to provide this information to Justin, which leads me to believe that if he reached out to Blake to find out that information, that he wasn't thinking he needed to keep this a big secret, right? Like, I think he thought the request was made in good faith.
But if we're going to believe that, then I think if I were Blake, I would spiral. I would be very upset about that. I would be definitely caught off guard. And I just think when anybody wants to know your weight, it just feels like aggressive.
I agree. As a woman, especially, I think it would make me feel very insecure. But I also think as a professional, like, and here, if this is from a professional trainer who's saying he has back problems, he does need to know, and so we can prepare for this lift scene. I think on some level, it's like that's where you kind of have to be a big girl and just be a professional, and like people need to know this information when it comes to him not wanting to injure himself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all it takes is a little bit of context to be like, okay, I get it. Right. I think I'm just sensitive about it. You know, done, and it's done.
Exactly. But that's not exactly the road Blake took, everyone. So instead, the earth quakes beneath everyone filming this movie. And Justin is summoned to Blake and Ryan's penthouse, where Ryan Reynolds swears at him and accuses him of fat-shaming his wife. He says, "How dare you fucking ask about my wife's weight? What is wrong with you?" The confrontation from Ryan and Lively was so aggressive that it left Justin feeling that he had no choice but to offer repeated apologies for what was a good faith and reasonable question to ask of his trainer.
So Ryan Reynolds demanded Baldoni remove the scene entirely. Blake refuses to perform the lift scene at all, even after it was rehearsed with a stunt double. In her own complaint, she lies about it and claims that he was asking about her weight for a scene that wasn't even in the film. But really, the only reason why the scene wasn't in the film is because Lively and Reynolds ensured it was taken out of the film. So I think this is another spot where it's like, oh, there's actually really helpful context here, and what she's saying is semantics.
Yeah, and not even semantics, a lie. It's literally a lie.
Right, is a lie.
Yeah, and it's meant to mislead. And she was hoping, again, that this lawsuit would never actually be filed, and she would never be deposed, and she would never actually have to she would never actually tell the truth about these lies.
Because you just say, hey, he fat shamed me, and all of a sudden everyone's going to think he's an asshole.
Right, exactly.
I don't know what it is about this year, but it is just so cold in New York. I've had to add so many more jackets and sweaters to my closet. But with this new year comes a new opportunity to reimagine ourselves and our wardrobes. This year, I'm resolving to refresh my look with quality pieces, but also stay on budget. And I can thanks to Quince. I think everyone needs Quince's cozy Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. They are just so luxe and gorgeous. I love mine. However you choose to refresh your look this year, All Quince pieces are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They're able to do that by partnering directly with top factories, cutting out the cost of the middleman, and passing the savings on to you. Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices, which I just love knowing. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. Quince has the most stunning activewear collection. I'm so excited to try it out. Everyone, upgrade your closet this year without the upgraded price tag. Go to quince.com/shopologist for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/apologist to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/apologist.
So then the lawsuit continues, and it just shows heartfelt text messages from Justin to Blake telling her to not worry about her appearance when she expresses insecurity about her postpartum body. She messages and is like, can we do the body scenes as late as possible in filming? And he says, unfortunately, I don't know. That depends on location availability, other actor availability. It's like so much more complex. I'm like, hey, can we move that to the end?
Right, exactly. And he's really sincere here. And like, so he says that, at first, so much of it comes down to locations and cast availability, etc. And then he sends another text saying, I want you to know you will look amazing. Anything you are insecure about, we will talk through and get creative together and make you comfortable. I just don't want you to stress about your body. It's the last thing you need. As soon as I have a rough schedule that's even remotely accurate, I'll share and I'll make sure the team keeps this in mind as well.
And she sends back this lengthy response about, it's like 2 pages of messages about how she considers her responsibility as an actor to be just like an athlete, even for, roles that aren't athletic. Her and Ryan take it so seriously.
Right.
And her work ethic is second to none. And they're going to be so hot together. I mean, it's very cringe and self-important, this entire message.
So I think it's worth noting here that with this whole fat shaming lift scene debacle, Blake basically says, if you don't take this out and kind of cop to what I'm demanding, you are going to have to recast me. I'm not going to do this. This is this first blow up where she delivers her first ultimatum.
This is a huge ultimatum because he knew that if she was recast, that she would go public with her having allegedly been fat shamed by him. Mm-hmm. So it says, implicit in this ultimatum was a threat to destroy Baldoni's reputation and career. As Lively well knew, Justin had worked throughout his career to earn and deserve a reputation based on his passionate advocacy for women's rights, a reputation she would later exploit and weaponize against him. If Lively were to back out of the film, especially based on accusations of fat shaming, Justin's reputation and life's work would be left in tatters. He had no choice but to bow to Lively and Reynolds' demands. Concerns about Lively's undue influence over the film began to grow before filming had even started.
So then we get into 2 examples where, Blake is seemingly very comfortable with Justin using certain language that's maybe a little bit less G-rated. And I think what they're trying to do with having these receipts in here is show that, she used words like sexy. She used words like ball busting. Mm-hmm. She would probably put that in her complaint as, Justin being inappropriate, but it was okay for her to do it.
Yeah, and apparently there was a moment where she was talking with other producers on the set and she had a pair of expensive heels on or shoes on, and she was talking about how sexy they were. And again, it's just, she was very comfortable and familiar with everyone and very relaxed, but apparently she started to have very stringent requirements of how other people behaved on the set that didn't apply to her.
Right, exactly.
There's the text message where she talks about how the beanie is such a sexier look. It feels TV without, when we're talking about the...
It justifies the rest of the skin.
These
are all great Instagram captions for anyone, by the way. Like, this is just choose any one of these fragments and, feels TV without. It's the look. It justifies the rest of the skin.
The belly chain washes the effort off the rest of the look, okay? That's what you can use for your next bikini selfie, everyone.
So then they continue painting this picture of just how chummy Blake and Justin are, even after this fat shaming blow up.
Right.
Things get better, that she feels comfortable around him. She says, I'm just pumping in my trailer if you want to work out our lines. Mm-hmm. She took photos of him holding and soothing her crying baby. They're laughing deliriously during late night writing sessions. And
she knows his tea order.
Yeah. And all of these events take place after the alleged sexual harassment, which is why her accusations really came out of the blue. So I think the whole point of this section is to show that, if Blake really felt like she was being sexually harassed, some of her behavior didn't really add up to that with how comfortable she felt with Justin and the way that she spoke to him. And I think that, that's not to say that you have to behave like the perfect victim if you are victimized, if you're hurt, but it strains credulity, as we always say. And it just, it adds context to these very black and white scenarios that she painted for us.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, like, if you really felt so victimized and so harassed by someone, would you ask them into your trailer while you're breastfeeding? Like, would you say, hey, I'm pumping, come in, let's run lines late at night? It paints a very different picture of how safe or unsafe she felt around him.
Right.
Okay, so then there's the SAG-AFTRA strikes, right? And so production pauses. Mm-hmm. And she has been very difficult. She's been rewriting scenes. She's been rewriting things daily. She's been kind of a nightmare. She's accused him of fat shaming, but they seem to have gotten chummier and things have gotten better. And the writer's strike happens. And then production breaks.
So she expresses excitement over returning to shoot in the fall in New York. She doesn't make any mention of any discomfort or harassment. That would only be brought up later, after months of being apart, on the day the strikes ended. It's also worth noting here that both before and during the strikes, Blake's eager involvement in the production took on a more insistent and manipulative tone. She asked for the dailies, which, and early cuts of scenes, just things that she honestly is just that are not in her jurisdiction,
right,
as, talent.
Right, exactly.
And yeah, for those not familiar with the term dailies, the dailies are like the raw footage of what was filmed that day, including the many takes. Mm-hmm. Like, which is really what the director, those are the materials the director sifts through and edits with the editor. I think too, there's a lot of frustration expressed over her requesting the dailies because it just shows that she wants day-to-day control,
right?
Day-to-day input, day-to-day feedback. And that is just such a burden.
Yeah, and it's such an overreach, and it just makes everything so much more complicated when they're constantly having to placate her, to bend to her will, to try to make this film and also have her co-direct it. It's insanity.
Especially with a person who's already issued an ultimatum. Mm-hmm. So they know that things can go south very quickly.
And they really, throughout this lawsuit, they are very afraid of these fat shaming allegations.
Yes.
It's like, for them, is like the guillotine she's showed them that she has.
Right.
And that she is ready to use at any moment on them.
Okay, so I'm going to read some of the messages between Justin, a producer, and Jamie Heath, where they're kind of discussing how they're going to handle her request. So, Justin sends a screenshot where Blake has said, hey, would you mind giving me access to the dailies? Yada, yada, yada. And then a producer responds to the screenshot and he or she says, I'd say no, but check your contract first, LOL. Jamie says, I was waiting for blank to respond first. It's an absolute no for me as well, respectfully. Not sure the best way to respond being how delicate it is, which I think just nods to the whole, situation being a minefield with her. And then it goes on to say, Jamie says, maybe we can let this be a Sony decision. And then Justin says, I think I'm just going to say yes and send her a playlist of a bunch of good takes from different scenes from the last 3 or 4 days, which I think is like him being like, okay, I'm not going to send her all of the dailies, but I'm going to placate her. I'm going to, maybe this will satisfy her.
I'm going to give her a library of scenes to look at.
Yes.
And to it's literally being like, okay, let's give my toddler something to do.
Right. No, it reminds me of In The Office when Creed has to be the interim manager and they're like, management wants you to spot the difference between these 2 photos. It's just a pointless job just to shut him up.
Exactly.
So anyway, I think that it's this is a big problem.
Okay. So it says that after they consulted internally on how to respond, Justin politely pushes back and says it's too much and too early in the editing process for them to share so much footage. So Justin messages her and he says, hi, sorry for the slow response. Family is good. Brutal being away for so long and happy we are finally together. Lots happening. All good things overall. Had to hire new editors who I adore. They're going through everything now. I'm so happy you felt energized by what you saw, meaning his gallery of clips that he sent, but not the dailies. Your performance is really, really beautiful. Stunning, actually. Regarding dailies, obviously, I want your input. That's why I sent you the 5-hour playlist. But at this point, it's too early for me to share all the dailies. I start my cut in early August, given the new editors, and still going through the rest myself. Also figuring out our shooting plan as I have to cut and combine and find ways to scale down for budget. Once I am physically in the edit and have touched scenes myself, I'd love to share with you. I hope you enjoy this time with your family. So this is during the strike.
Yeah, this is during the strike. They're trying to make the most of it by getting some of the editing done.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's him trying to placate her. She responds, I don't want to infringe on your time with your cut. And of course, don't feel the need to send me cut scenes. I was just excited to see regarding dailies. None of the producers have had access to dailies. It's just you. Like she's kind of like pressing him a little bit.
Yeah, she's questioning him.
Yeah. And then he says, no, not just me. Blank and Jamie have access to the dailies, but not assemblies or cuts. So she's kind of, pressing him. Then there's a birthday text message that is sent to her on August 25th. He says, happy birthday, Blake. Coincidentally, today is the last day of my edit as we are closing the room until we shoot again. It's been wildly successful and I'm so happy. You are so fantastic in the film. I'm sending you over one of my favorite sections. I won't be posting or sending anything to anyone after this, but I'm excited to show you more in person when we come back. Please watch before Sunday as all PIX accounts get shut down on Monday until we're back up. Can't wait to hear what you think. Have an amazing day.
So clearly he's trying to say like, we're done.
Yeah.
Like I'm not sending you any more stuff, but in a very nice way, like I'm not sending anything else to anyone else.
Yeah. I actually think this is a way of him being like, hey, take a look at this. Like I'm trying to involve you in the way that I feel comfortable.
Right.
So the WGA strike ends on September 27th, end of September. And then the SAG-AFTRA strike ends on November 9th. Months before both of these strikes ended, Baldoni had made Lively's representative aware that they would continue pre-production in order to hit the ground running when the strikes ended. But Lively and her lawyers had been busy devising other plans during the strike. The same day that the SAG-AFTRA strike ended, so November 9th, Baldoni, the studios, and the producers were eager to resume production. Instead, they were met with an email from Lively's lawyer who sent Wayfarer an unsettling and unexpected 17-point list of non-negotiable conditions that must be met before Lively would return to work. The stunning list was drafted for the apparent purpose of insinuating or outright claiming that Baldoni, Heath, and others had engaged in sexually inappropriate conduct during filming. Nothing could be further from the truth. Okay, so I want to say that I think during the strikes, both of them, I think this is when Blake really realizes that she's losing control, that she's not going to be able to, have her way with like the edit and whatnot. And maybe it was the straw that really broke the camel's back with the dailies, where she realized, oh, they're not going to let me in. I really am shut out in this way. And I think it's just really interesting to like know the full timeline and to realize like she, like behind the scenes during the strike, this is when they were cooking up this list of demands.
Yeah, I think that the fat shaming incident before production even began, or filming even began, was nothing compared. It was the precursor to the main event. It was the appetizer, and this is the main meal,
right? Where
she throws down a gauntlet and essentially seizes the entirety of control over this film with this list of demands that she sends and what this list of demands implies.
Well, and I think it's interesting, like seeing her correspondence during the strike with Justin. Once again, it doesn't feel like the right type of correspondence you would be having with someone who you think is like, who you're like, I don't even want to go back to work because they're sexually harassing me.
Right, completely.
Okay, so after they get this list of demands, both Wayfarer and Sony attempt to revise it to make it factually accurate, because they were like this. I think when they got the set of demands, they were like, this isn't true. And if we're going to sign off on this, it needs to be true.
Right.
And they sent comments through. But Lively's counsel said it's actually non-negotiable.
Right.
This list of demands, you cannot edit them. You cannot change them. You just need to sign it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they said the list we provided was not intended as a starting point for a negotiation. Rather, it is a set of protections that need to be in place in order for our client to return to work. Please let us know as soon as possible whether Wayfarer will agree to accept all of the protections included in our original communications.
And the alternative to them not signing was to lose millions of dollars, cost hundreds of people their jobs, after they'd already been out of work for like the past few months with the strike, and just fully destroy their relationship with Sony. I mean, this is like the nuclear option.
Yes, exactly. She fully goes nuclear. Okay, so we're going to get to this list of demands. Just as we discussed the demands in Blake Lively's complaint, we're going to talk about the demands as illustrated by Justin Baldoni's attorneys.
Yeah, so they're going one by one with this list of demands and explain how these are all incorrect.
Mm-hmm. And unnecessary.
Yeah, factually untrue.
So Lively demands that an intimacy coordinator be present at all times on set. And in fact, an intimacy coordinator had already been engaged during the first half of production before the strike. So Wayfarer took no issue with this request itself. And obviously that's why they want it corrected.
Right.
Despite Blake insinuating that there was not one. On or about March 20th, 2023, nearly 2 months before filming began, Justin met with the intimacy coordinator in early of April 2023, more than 6 weeks before production commenced, she was engaged. Lively was aware, as Baldoni had informed her in writing on April 6, 2023. Blake's attorney was also aware, as was documented on May 8th, in emails between her and Wayfarer's attorney, within which Wayfarer provided her the intimacy coordinator's approved nudity rider, followed by written confirmation of said approval. Okay, it says, although the presence of an intimacy coordinator is not a Screen Actors Guild rule, but rather a recommendation, Baldoni was eager to engage one from the start to ensure talent, himself included, felt safe during intimate scenes. And I think that is important to note. Like, they italicize it, like he also wanted one for himself.
Yeah.
So it was important to him that the intimacy coordinator be a woman to help craft sex scenes that would speak to the mostly female audience and be written from the female gaze, a fact Lively later mocked in both her complaint and the CRD complaint.
So I think this point is interesting.
Yeah.
Given both Lively and Reynolds' firsthand knowledge of these facts, Lively's insistence in her November 9th return to production demands document on the constant presence of an intimacy coordinator was baffling. However, because Wayfarer had already engaged an intimacy coordinator and had no issue with the request, and given that the request came with a threat that Lively would not come back to work after months of filming and planning, Wayfarer acquiesced. This acquiescence, given with the written caveat that Wayfarer disagreed with the characterizations, was later used by Lively to falsely suggest an acknowledgement that there had not been an intimacy coordinator at all. Basically, because they agreed to it, like Lively saying they knew that they hadn't had one from the get-go, or that they had, had missed this critical part of, filming scenes like this.
Right. And she leaves out the part where their attorneys wrote and were like, we don't want to agree to any of this because it's unnecessary.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, no, actually, this isn't up for negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
So very convenient.
So continuing on with her issues with the intimacy coordinator and the nude scenes. In her demand, it suggested that nude or intimate scenes were filmed with non-essential personnel present. This is when we talked about, it not being a closed set. Lively alleged during a scene where she was, quote, mostly nude with her legs spread wide in stirrups and only a small piece of fabric covering her genitalia, that there were, quote, non-essential persons present. This allegation is knowingly false. To begin with, to describe Lively as mostly nude and naked below the chest down is dishonest. Lively was wearing black briefs and a pregnancy suit that covered her midsection, and her top was covered by a hospital gown. Her legal complaint deliberately suggests she was wearing a small piece of nude fabric glued around her genitalia by stating that this is, quote, generally what female actors use to, quote, provide some minimal privacy without disturbing the shot, leaving the reader to believe Lively was only wearing this small piece of fabric. Lively was aware of this birthing scene as she was heavily involved in writing rather than rewriting the script and gave creative input for this specific scene, even against the director's creative vision. So basically, she was like involved in the writing of this scene.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is the most cut and dry part of this for me.
I think this was a moment too in our initial recording where we both just, our jaws hit the floor.
Our jaws hit the floor because what it said was there was that thin strip of material over her genitalia, but other than that, she was nude from the chest down, and that's when his friend happens to be between her legs and playing the role of the OBGYN, and how it was a chaotic set and there are all these people going in and out. The billionaire co-founder just happens to be there. And again, sorry, I'm not getting so heated because I was so heated over that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but if she was in black briefs, and basically mostly covered, she was fucking lying.
Right. This is a lie. And a lie via some weird semantics about, most of the time, people would wear a thin strip of, cloth over their genitalia. Like, it's so blatant.
It's so blatant. And I think the problem with this kind of lying is this is why people don't believe women. And it's so frustrating for actual victims. I mean, this is just the worst thing you can do. Make up a bold-faced lie like this, create this narrative where you're this victim, where you've been sexually harassed, and it just makes it so much more difficult for people who actually have had something like this happen to them to share their story.
Right. I don't want to scrutinize this.
Right.
I want to believe people when they say they were victimized. But unfortunately, a lie like this makes me think twice.
Exactly.
Okay, so moreover, film footage clearly demonstrates that the set was not chaotic, as she alleges, and only essential individuals were present for the scene. Importantly, Lively knowingly and falsely alleges that the film's financier was present during these scenes, and insinuates he was watching her nude, which he had no desire to do. Quote, He was not even on set during the filming of that scene. He arrived later, merely stopping by for a brief moment amid his busy business schedule, and was present during the filming of a scene in which Lively's character spoke with a female OBGYN doctor, a scene in which she was fully clothed.
Okay. It just makes my blood boil.
I know.
I know. It's such a dig in the lawsuit when it's like he had no desire to watch her film this nude scene that she claims, he happened to be stalking the set that day.
I did think that part was a little bit hard to believe. That it was just like they were so horny that they were like, oh, this is gonna be the birthing scene. Like, you gotta come by. You gotta come by for the birthing scene.
Dude, I'm gonna get you to play the doctor. You're gonna be between Blake's legs.
It's just like I don't know. Men are disgusting for sure. That can be a thing, but I didn't fully believe that. Pop Apologist is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it can mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states. We're about to get into a few of these moments where she has claimed that Justin, took liberties with some of these like more intimate scenes that they were filming. Mm-hmm. And what he describes is just wildly different. And it's really hard to reconcile, what she said in her original complaint. So, we had the conversation about the intimacy coordinator, and Blake basically says that he insisted on uncomfortable or gratuitous scenes. But in fact, these scenes were proposed by the intimacy coordinator and by all accounts, very typical asks of any actor performing simulated sex scenes. This is well documented in handwritten notes he took during meetings with the intimacy coordinator and later read to Lively. Lively, in her recent allegations, misrepresented these ideas as personal, despite the fact that they were workshopping scenes for their characters. Lively's inability to discern the basic premise of the divide between collaborating on a film and personal interactions with her co-star is woven throughout her claims of sexual harassment. So I think that we should get into where she says, like, the pornography, moment.
Yeah.
So Blake alleges that Baldoni personally added graphic content, including a scene where Miss Lively was to orgasm on camera. This is false. During a creative meeting, which Lively requested to take place in her home, Baldoni read to her his notes from the intimacy coordinator, including a suggestion that Lively's character orgasmed during the scene, similar to the book. Lively remarked, "Oh no, I'm too old for that." And Baldoni offered another suggestion instead, also from his notes from the meeting with the intimacy coordinator. Baldoni then moved on. Blake's later complaint sheds light on what this point was alluding to in this demand, which at the time was baffling and upon review of the filmed evidence is unequivocally based on a lie. So production was filming a romance montage of Lily and Ryle on their date. One of the producers played music to set the mood so the characters could slow dance. Lively, consistently unable to take direction, insisted she really liked the idea of the characters constantly talking, because as she described, she and her husband liked to, quote, keep talking and talking and talking. Baldoni, her director and the film's assistant director, who was directing the scene, disagreed. In an attempt to encourage her to take his direction, Baldoni offered up that he and his wife often just look in each other's eyes silently, to which she responds, like sociopaths, and laughed. Baldoni laughed and shook it off. While Lively once again started talking about how she and her husband can't not talk, Baldoni said, "I think that's cute," and complimented the couple. To which Lively responded, "I think it's more than cute."
It's just so odious.
It's so odious. She wants it to be exactly the way she wants it to be. There's no taking direction. This is a shared scene.
And I feel like so much of it is like, I actually just want this to be about me.
Yes.
Like, I don't really care how Lily would dress. I want my hideous wardrobe.
Yeah, I'm also like, I don't know why your romance montage needs to be like, in the story about domestic violence, needs to also match the romance montage of your life with Ryan Reynolds, but okay.
I mean, can you imagine a more annoying dinner table or just household than to have to grow up with parents who never stop talking. They just talk.
I think if you watch the Rooftop scene, and maybe this is me just reading into it because I've always kind of been annoyed with Blake and Ryan, but I think it's just very clear that like that's the way she flirts. Mm-hmm. That's the way she would, play hard to get with a guy and chide him.
To me, it just gives narcissist. It's like I just want it to be all about me and how I appear and my personality.
I swear half the time she's just like, it's like cool girl, like I don't know. I can't.
Well, I think that's why she wanted the dailies, because I think she wanted to say, this is the exact take. I think I look the best and had my best moment. That's why she wanted to exert such total control.
Remember how she says that, there was a moment where he just dragged his lips across her neck and said, "It just smells so good." So what actually happened here, according to Justin, is that she wouldn't stop talking during the scene where they're not supposed to be talking. And at some point, Heath and another producer called Justin aside to express they couldn't capture the intended shot because she wouldn't stop talking. He was instructed to somehow get her to stop. While there was a brief verbal exchange, Baldoni, heeding the instruction of their assistant director and producers, continued to try to bring them back into character. As they were acting in this montage scene, Lively continued to break character and speak as herself rather than as Lily, which was extremely confusing for Baldoni, who was trying to balance directing the scene within his artistic vision while also acting in character while filming and trying to get Lively to do the same. Lively apologized for the smell of her spray tan and body makeup. Baldoni responded, "It smells good," and continued acting, slow dancing as he believed his character would with his partner, which requires some amount of physical touching. Lively took them out of character again and began to joke about Baldoni's nose, which he laughed off and joked in turn, even as Lively joked that he should get plastic surgery.
I mean, okay, quick on the self-tanner. She's saying my self-tanner smells bad, and he's like, it smells good. Like, he's just trying to, like, make her feel fine.
Right.
And she makes that out to be like, oh, you smell good. Like, he's this big creep.
Yes.
I'm sorry. The rhinoplasty of it all is just so gross.
I cannot imagine saying that to another person. Another thing here, she alleges that this scene was filmed without sound, which is why it was so weird that he said anything in the first place.
Right,
but he was wearing a microphone. So the entire exchange is captured on camera. Any suggestion that this scene was filmed in any manner other than pure professionalism by Baldoni is unequivocally countered with actual evidence. Her allegation of sexual harassment is a documented and knowingly fabricated lie. Whew.
It's just so egregious. And you're right. That was such like a big point of it. Of like, there didn't need to be any sound. So why is he telling me that I smell good?
That part, the weird part about the birthing scenes, and then the porn thing really like took me to Blake's side.
Yes.
Like those things were the things I was just like, that just feels all weird and inappropriate. There's just no explaining that away.
Like you don't need, as someone's boss, to discuss your porn addiction.
No. But as we find out...
Yeah, we're going to keep going. Okay, so more is to be revealed.
So this next point is about like the choreographed kisses.
Moreover, it was Blake who engaged in unchoreographed kissing scenes. One scene, again captured on camera, exhibits Blake pulling Baldoni in to kiss her. It is clear Lively was initiating unchoreographed kissing. In one take, she pulls Justin in and kissed him once, and another twice, and the number of kisses entirely initiated by Lively changed at her whim. Baldoni, as a professional actor who, among other roles, played the lead love interest in television's Jane the Virgin for 5 years, is, like most actors, accustomed to rehearsing or filming scenes multiple times, often with variations. While Lively now takes issue with any innocuous improvisation Baldoni as Ryle may have allegedly initiated while in character, Baldoni treated their relationship on camera as professional, each playing their part, each doing their job. If no one was supposed to improvise, Baldoni would have no way of knowing based on Lively's own actions. Lively demonstrated again and again that this was a normal and acceptable part of filming romantic scenes. And I'm sorry, it would be. You're filming romantic scene. If every single, like, how can you make that seem natural?
Yeah, I don't think anyone believes that it's like, okay, now this is going to be a lip kiss, no tongue, 3 seconds. Right. No, I don't think they're scripting it out. Maybe they are, but I don't think they are actually.
Right.
Lively also complains that there was inappropriate and improvised kissing during the first period of filming before the strike break. But in fact, the only 2 kissing scenes filmed during the initial filming period were both scenes that included kisses as written in the script. These kissing scenes were not improvised.
So in her list of demands, she's saying no improvising when no improvising had even happened. Okay, so in Blake's lawsuit, she says that Justin wanted her to remove her blazer to see her in her onesie that she was wearing, and that he told her that this would be a sexier look, or that she looked sexy, and she felt very uncomfortable about this, okay? So apparently what actually happened is that, according to Justin's attorneys, he suggested she take off her big coat so that her onesie would be visible in the scene because it will be hot, because it was 90 degrees in the small bar with no air conditioning. Lively mischaracterizes this in her complaint as Baldoni referring to her as hot, not, the temperature. Given that Lively herself had earlier expressed to him that she wanted her character's wardrobe to be sexier, Baldoni encouraged her to accept direction by saying it's sexy, meaning that without the big coat, the wardrobe was sexier, like the beanie, the purpose of the beanie, to be sexy. As Lively had said she wanted it to be. Lively took this personally. She was unable to take the direction regarding her self-chosen wardrobe, stating, "That's not what I'm going for." It's like, well, it doesn't matter what you're going for. You're not the wardrobe director. You're not the stylist. Anyway, Baldoni, recognizing that she may have taken this direction personally and appeared offended, apologized more than once. His statements were immediately followed by his gesture that she had something in her teeth and a request for someone on set to get her a toothpick. This exchange, all of which was captured on camera, demonstrates how ludicrous and deliberately malicious Lively's allegations are.
Which I think is them saying, like, it wasn't this moment where he was just like so horned up for her. He was like, they were just like talking about the way she was, like, what she was wearing, and then he was like, you know, like, and I think it's just like it's all on camera.
Right.
Okay, so this goes into a little bit more about, you know, her comment on his nose. While on one hand, Lively accuses Baldoni of making comments about her appearance, on the other, she made derogatory comments about Baldoni's appearance, telling him he should undergo rhinoplasty, something he's publicly expressed insecurities about. Lively's comment about Baldoni's nose is also captured on camera. Baldoni, rather than write down a list of grievances against Lively, brushed it off and moved on with the scene.
Who does that? Who says you should get a nose job? I just feel like that's just like the worst.
It's the worst. I can't even imagine a scenario where that would be appropriate or welcomed.
Exactly.
So now we're getting to point 5 from Blake's complaint. No discussion of personal experiences with sex or nudity, including as it relates to conduct with spouses or others. So an example Baldoni offers here of how this is being grossly mischaracterized is about a proposal from the intimacy coordinator that Baldoni's character Ryle not orgasm after he'd satisfied Lily. Blake remarked, "I'd be mortified if that happened to me," personalizing the character's sexual act. Baldoni, following Lively's lead and what he understood to be an attempt to connect with and develop their characters, remarked that, quote, "those have been some of the most beautiful moments," end quote, between him and his wife. They then moved on. In another instance, Lively and Baldoni were...
Wait, sorry. We have to just... Sorry. She said in her complaint that he talked about orgasming with his wife and asked her, you know, it's just so different if you open up the conversation and say, if this happened to me in my personal intimate life, I would be mortified. That says, let's relate our characters to our personal lives.
Right.
And he takes her lead, and then he is supposed to be...
Well, and I don't think what he said was gross or creepy.
No.
Yeah, I think also it's like he's talking about his wife.
Yes.
So in another instance, as Lively and Baldoni were developing their scenes, Lively said, "I don't want it to look like porn," and then offered up that she'd never seen porn in her life, a very personal fact to share. Baldoni complimented her and said, "That's wonderful, because unfortunately he was first exposed to it when he was 10 years old and struggled with a porn addiction for a period of his life. He writes openly about this in both his books, Boys Will Be Human and Man Enough, addressing pornography as a societal problem. Anyone who knows or has done research on Baldoni would have a knowledge of this, and it can in no way be characterized as inappropriate, especially after opening the door to the discussion by disclosing something highly personal."
It's very vulnerable to say. It's like saying I struggled with drug addiction and someone being like, to return to set, I don't want to hear about his drug use.
Right.
His, all his stuff with drugs.
Especially when you're the one who when you said, "I've never watched it," when you kind of wanted to like virtue signal a little bit.
Exactly. It's such a way of taking something that someone's vulnerable about and twisting the knife,
right.
And using it against them, using it as a weapon against them.
Right. It's very reductive.
Okay. It says that at every turn, Baldoni was entrapped. Moreover, Jamie Heath, who had nothing to do with this exchange and has never had a porn addiction or even mentioned porn in Lively's presence, was falsely and knowingly lumped into this accusation. So Lively continued with an outrageous and knowingly false suggestion that she was shown pornography or naked images of Heath's wife on set. This allegation knowingly and maliciously misrepresents an instance when, in connection with the birthing scene, Heath, at the director's request, attempted to show Lively a video that demonstrated the director's vision for the scene. This video, which ultimately was not shown to Lively, even though she'd stated she'd like to see it later as she was eating at the time, is by all accounts beautiful. Since Lively wanted to see it later, what she saw was the first image at the start of the video, which shows Heath's wife, himself, and their baby after his wife gave birth at home during a natural childbirth. To characterize this image that captures such a beautiful moment with their newborn baby, shared with the consent of his wife for purposes of the film, as a naked photo, or worse, porn is deplorable. Nonetheless, Lively did not object and asked to see the video after she ate, having managed to convince the director to write and shoot the scene according to her specifications.
So the one thing that they don't touch on here is the quote from him that says, where she says, "Is your wife okay that you're showing me this?" And then he says, "She's not weird about that stuff." That's one thing that they don't really contextualize for us.
Yeah, that is interesting.
It's not a smoking gun per se, but it's not mentioned here.
Yeah. Now, not to be Justin's defense attorney, but part of me wonders if, she was meant like, this is an intimate video, like this is her birth scene, and like she's like could be nude and what I'm about to see, like, is she okay with this?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's still weird to be like, she's not
I
weird
think
about this
I think this is more about him than her. That he was like, she's not weird about that stuff. Just shows, I don't know, the way that he thinks about it in a way that, like, I don't love.
Yeah.
It's like consenting to like having naked imagery of yourself shown. Like, she's not a prude. She's not weird about that stuff.
Right.
Anyway, just worth pointing out. Just, we're trying to be somewhat fair, as fair as possible.
Yes. Thank you, Chandler.
So still, without conceding that anything remotely inappropriate had happened, Wayfair agreed to this condition so that they could resume production.
Okay, so the next point is that no one entered Lively's trailer while she was undressed. So we'll all remember that Blake said that Jamie Heath came in, she was topless, he was instructed to turn around, but he still looked, and it was just super uncomfortable.
So what this lawsuit says, though, about that is that while it is possible he inadvertently made eye contact at one point, he does not recall. Lively later mentioned he did, and it made her uncomfortable, to which he responded, "I'm so sorry, I really didn't realize." Lively responded, "I know you weren't trying to cop a look," and they moved on. Lively's suggestion that not one but two professional men barged into her trailer several times or attempted to enter or pressured her to allow them to enter offends not only their long-established integrity, but the sanctity of their vows to their wives and their dedication to their children and families. Lively is aware that both men are incredibly supportive and respectful of motherhood, to say the least. Heath's wife is a vocal advocate for postpartum mothers. Baldoni's wife co-founded a company that designed a breastfeeding garment, a prototype that originated with his mother when he was an infant. Basically, this is just saying, like, they have amazing wives. And so they couldn't have made her feel uncomfortable. That point is a little bit like, it's a nothing burger to me. And I don't think it means that they couldn't have made her feel uncomfortable at one point.
Agreed.
The next one. No filming nude or sex scenes except per nudity writer, and no use of prior nude scenes without nudity writer. So they say that Lively was provided a nudity writer approved by the SAG intimacy coordinator and was given ample opportunity to provide notes before production commenced. Despite constant pursuit over several months, Lively's attorney never produced notes, and Lively not only didn't sign the nudity writer during the first phase of production, but never even signed her employment agreement. Her main concern, while Wayfair's lawyers were all but begging for signatures, was ensuring her fee was deposited into escrow. In order to move forward, they had to pay her fee even though she hadn't signed her agreements. I think that's pretty interesting.
It's also crazy that they sent over nudity writers for her to sign. She never does. And then in her list of demands, she's like, "Where's the nudity writer?"
Yeah.
It's also just so arrogant to be like, "I'm not going to sign my employment agreement, but where's the check?"
Exactly.
Okay, the next one is that she was entitled to a personal representative on set. They're like, "Fine, we have no objection." Then that she will be given notice of any COVID-19 exposure. They agree and say that prior to the start of principal photography, nose testing or masking was required, but they agreed to inform Lively if production became aware that she was exposed to COVID. The next is no retaliation for a request. So while Wayfair in no way conceded that Lively's demands amounted to a report of genuine sexual misconduct, Wayfair had no interest in retaliating against Lively for making these demands. Their only desire was to make a great movie.
Next one, mutually agreed Sony representative required on set. Wayfair agreed to the concept of having a Sony rep on set whenever Lively was on set, though gently pushed back on the idea that it always had to be Angie Giannetti, who might occasionally have other pressing work obligations. However, Wayfair agreed. Okay, so let's just get through a few more of these just to make sure that, we've laid out everything in the case, and then we'll get to, the more earth-shattering ones.
So point 11 is that they agree that a mutually agreed upon Sony representative will be on set. Fine. Additionally, in point 12, that a Lively approved producer would be hired to supervise filming. This is a big one because hiring a producer, not an EP, but a producer, it's a big budgetary concern. It's a big responsibility. So Wayfair pointed out that the additional expense and contractual implications of hiring an additional producer would have detrimental effects on the production. In the end, they agreed as it would cost production more if Lively refused to return to work.
So point 13 and 14, very boring. So, basically this is just like Wayfair and, the people who are the plaintiffs in this lawsuit, basically saying that they were already sort of taking care of these things. So the first one is existing third-party producers empowered to actively supervise the production. Also, Wayfair to use Lively approved body and stunt doubles for intimate and sexual violence scenes. A note here about this: despite not requesting this at contract negotiation phase, Lively's pre-approved body and stunt doubles were fully acceptable to Wayfair, and they agreed, despite that this was an additional and unplanned expense to the film. Ultimately, no body doubles were used in the film at Lively's request. Lively and Baldoni displayed a courteous and professional relationship throughout phase 2 of production.
Point number 15 is very interesting. So it says, no filming nude or sex scenes of any actor's portrayal of Lily except per nudity rider, and no use of prior nude scenes without nudity rider. So they say this was an overstepped, an attempt to expand Lively's right to her own nudity rider to assert control of the nudity rider of another actor, the actor who portrayed the young Lily. While seeing this as infringing on the young actor's independent right to her own nudity rider, Wayfair once again was forced to agree, while informing Lively that young Lily had already filmed her intimate scenes pursuant to her own nudity rider.
So why do you think she did that?
I just think it's like full control.
Yeah.
She just wants to, it's just like, she wants to have her tentacles on every part of this film.
Right.
And anything, again, I think it comes back to the narcissism. It's like anything that is related to me that's potentially portraying me.
Right.
I want to have total dominance over
Right.
and control.
Okay, point 16, which is, I think, a total earth-shattering one. All day players must be hired through talent agencies, not personal connections.
So we were very, very upset about this.
Yes.
Because when
It was like, I'll get you to play the OBGYN. It'll be so sick. Like,
when she said in her complaint that she was in the stirrups with just a small piece of cloth covering her genitalia, which we know now to be allegedly a lie, that she actually had black briefs on and was covered. I remember how they were like, and she had repeatedly asked to be covered in between takes, and it took her asking a bunch of times when she literally had briefs on. Anyway, so we were so upset to hear that also she just happened to find out during that his friend was between her legs playing the OBGYN.
Yeah.
And normally an actor, a local actor would be hired. Well, according to this lawsuit, this point appeared to relate to Lively's misleading claim that Justin inappropriately cast a personal friend to play the obstetrician during Lily's birth scene. Baldoni casting an experienced actor who happens to be a friend of his is no different than casting Lively's sister, who was cast because she's Lively's sister. The actor portraying the obstetrician is an award-winning Shakespearean-trained actor with an MFA in acting from UCLA, and in addition to appearing on numerous hit television shows, has toured nationally with a Tony Award-winning acting company and attended Oxford's acting program on full scholarship. I mean, this guy has more acting chops than probably most actors.
and her sister got like a cameo at the beginning of the film. It's just like rules for me, rules for thee.
Exactly.
And this guy literally is an actor. So it's not like, he was just a nobody.
And they just say, to reiterate, Lively knowingly made a false statement that only a small piece of fabric covered her genitalia during the birth scene. In fact, Lively was wearing briefs during the scene and was covered by a hospital gown and was wearing a pregnancy suit covering her midsection. This was not in any way a nude or partially nude scene.
And there's footage of it, I'm sure.
Once again, Wayfair agreed despite being wholly offended by this accusation. Like, they get this list of demands and they're just like, what?
Right.
Like, what this is insinuating is basically like, just know what I'm going to accuse you of if I decide to.
Yeah.
And just know about my monsters, my beautiful monsters.
I think this gives me
dragons.
a lot more understanding for why he hired Melissa Nathan.
Completely.
It's
oh my
like
gosh.
she's laying the groundwork to destroy our lives.
She's laying the groundwork and also creating a paper trail. And that was another point we made. We were like, why would she have this list of demands so early in the filming process if this hadn't happened? It's like, she really, I mean, it's giving Mastermind.
Yeah.
And that's a sacred song to me. So it really makes me sad the way that Blake Lively is truly souling the great Taylor.
Guys, we could never see another pap walk the same way again.
Apparently it's rumored that Blake wanted to be at the Chiefs game last weekend.
Yeah, I saw that. And it was like too much drama.
And Taylor was like, absolutely not. Thank you, Taylor. You were starting to come back into our good graces. But
so I actually have a theory. Can I tell you?
Please.
My theory of one way Blake could get herself out of this hot water is if she basically just says, I was in a postpartum haze. I was in, I had just given birth and I was just under a lot of pressure and stress. I think that's the only way that she's going to garner any type of favor, with the public after this, because I just don't know how she comes back from this. I was just thinking as, if I were in her PR camp, maybe that would be a strategy I would give her.
It's such an interesting idea. I think that I think that people are not as forgiving as you're giving them
I
credit
know.
for.
No, I'm not saying they would be. I'm just saying, like, how do you excuse a personality disorder? I don't know. Maybe like this is giving full-blown liar.
Yeah, it's giving sociopath energy. And honestly, I don't think there's coming back from this. I think Blake Lively is done. You think that any studio is going to want to work with Blake Lively after this?
But I don't know, though, because of Ryan Reynolds and like...
You think people are going to want to go see Blake Lively films after this? People are done with Blake Lively.
I don't know.
Like, obviously, people have been canceled and come back, but I think what's different about this is, I feel like with a Louis C.K. or people that have been canceled but now are back on tour doing whatever... Blake Lively didn't really have a lot of likability to begin with.
She wasn't like, necessarily beloved before.
Yeah.
I mean, I think too, once you've been exposed as a liar, I don't know, they're like, I think being exposed as someone who has done something wrong, like, I don't know.
No, it's true. It's almost
being like exposed as a liar, especially about like sexual harassment, like that's on another level.
It's like someone trying to ruin someone else's career.
Yes, and at the expense of like, I don't know, progress for women and like,
yes,
you know, it's really like, it's really shitty.
It's so true. I do not see forgiveness in Blake Lively's future. I think she's just going to have to, you know, pray she can keep her fortune and just live as a private rich person. But I don't know if that will happen. If they're going to trial with this, this is going to be crazy.
What is the audio that apparently they have of them like taking some picture when they hear like the billionaire say like, I want to sue Blake Lively for $100 million or something? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't know about this.
Why don't you read the last point and I'll look this up.
Okay. I also want to read you guys this email from Sony to Jamie Heath. And it kind of goes to show the general tone of how they received these requests and basically that they found them to be befuddling. So it says, hey, Jamie, take a look at the following after our conversation. No change in my mind what we discussed last evening. Items 1 through 10, 15, and 17 are basically just yes, of course. Interestingly, I'm surprised that you all don't already have a negotiated nudity writer in place given the subject matter and content in this book, or am I misinterpreting this comment? Items 11 through 13, I want to hear more about what is underlying and what she's hoping to accomplish, respectfully, of course, in the hope that some combination of the studio representative and the, quote, empowerment of Alex presumably might mitigate the need to engage an A-level producer. That's going to be a lot of expense. Item 14 is another question mark since it sounds like she approved the engaged stunt double. And for item 16, I guess I'm confused about this one as well and why the engagement of day players has found its way on this list. Perhaps some of the upcoming sensitive scenes involve day players / extras, and this is an attempt to manage the perception of their professionalism. And they're just confused.
Yeah.
They're like, what? This is all obvious and basically already being done. Are you sure there not a nudity writer?
Right.
It's like so confusing.
Right.
To Sony and to these executives. Okay, so then it also says further, as discussed, overall the tone of the response has to be part denying the underlying insinuation / allegations, but doing so in a way that doesn't inflame or escalate further, since most of what's on the list Wayfarer is acknowledging / addressing. And of course, any unease on her part is paramount concern to the production, and you're all committed to working with her to ensure that she's comfortable with the plan and the execution of the next few weeks in order to complete photography.
Before returning to production, Lively had even more script notes and changes beyond what was already performed during phase 1 of production. So really quick, the last point is all hands meeting before production resumes. This is, I think, the big meeting that happens at their penthouse where Ryan, basically screams at Justin and, the one exec says, I've never seen anything like that in my 40 years. Mm-hmm. So I think that was just like the request to have that meeting. So they get this list of demands. Everyone's kind of reeling at it. And I think it's really starting to sink in for the team, like what this means and how carefully they have to moving forward.
And what's at stake here?
Yeah. So in the face of these terrifying and false accusations couched as demands, even just her saying no more is so intentional.
And saying there's no negotiating this list.
Mm-hmm. So in the face of these terrifying and false accusations couched as demands, as well as Lively's threat that she would not return to production, Baldoni realized he needed to cede control of the script to Lively as she wished. His film would be taken from him by threats and coercion, and there was nothing to be done about it. In an email to his team containing the notes on his revised script, he expressed his sadness and frustration over Lively's takeover of a film they spent years developing. I'm actually going to read this email because I think it's pretty sad. So it's, hey team, attached is a revised script with the below notes / caveats in bold. This is not final as there are things we need to discuss and then implement. Also, I've added in blank RID here to have eyes on this so he can digest at the same time as all of you. I've spent the better part of the last few days trying to figure this out. Everyone knows how I feel about all this and how angry I am that Blake has taken over our film and somehow rewrote a movie we spent years developing, writing, and funding. So yes, I am furious and sad, but I will continue to get back up with the goal of getting us to the finish line. I have come to terms with the fact that the only way out is through. I am waving the white flag and submitting. I'm going to give her 98% of what she wants. I'm sure none of us have the energy to fight anymore. The team who has been working their asses off needs a shooting script on January 2nd. There are minor things I did to each scene, some notes I made and some tiny ones I didn't. Most of what I touched is below. The big issues here are going to be intimacy, how and what we are shooting for those scenes, and how this script is going to be presented to her and with what notes. To that end, we all need to get on the phone and talk through it, as the risk of something innocuous or not meeting her standards could and would very likely be used against me, as it already has. And creativity is impossible in an environment shrouded in fear. By now, we all know what she is capable of. So he's basically saying, like, we need to mind our fucking P's and Q's, because if anything is not exactly what she wants, she's going to use it against me.
Right,
and
exactly. I'm trying to think of like a good analogy, but it's like someone, it's just they know they're being framed for a crime. And they're like, okay, and now we have to go into the crime scene. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
Like she's just entrapping them.
Well, and he has no choice but to finish the movie.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, it's a lose-lose for him, no matter what. So at this point, he realizes it's a lose-lose. He's giving her what she wants.
So the next part of this, they describe meeting with Ryan, and basically Ryan unleashes on Justin, and people are really shaken who are at this meeting, because they said in their professional career they had never seen someone talk to someone like this. And this is what the lawsuit says. It says, now that Lively had unleashed Reynolds on Baldoni and Wayfair, they felt powerless to oppose the couple. Just as Lively had warned in April 2023, 9 months before, Reynolds would ensure that Lively's demands were met at every turn. You know, one of her beautiful monsters, one of her dragons, as Khaleesi. From then on, Lively would get her way, or else, unmistakably, Lively would use her carefully constructed paper trail to destroy Wayfair, Heath, Baldoni, and the film. Okay, so this is where they say now they resume filming and Lively completely usurps this film. So they complete principal photography, and then this is where the lawsuit says Lively completely usurps this film. So it says the Directors Guild of America requires a 10-week editing period for directors to privately edit and assemble the director's cut. This period is sacrosanct, as it gives the director uninterrupted time to creatively shape the final product, a time to experiment, take risks, refine until the film fully reflects their vision. For Baldoni, this period is the peak experience of the filmmaking process, a time to immerse himself in the creative craft, free from external influences. But Lively denied Baldoni this experience on this powerful and deeply felt film.
Lively requested through producer Tom Black to join Baldoni in the editing bay. As a seasoned professional with over 20 years of experience in film and television, not to mention growing up in a family deeply involved in the industry, Lively knew full well the implications of her request. But in the aftermath of the serious and false allegations that she'd leveled against Baldoni, Heath, and Wayfair and the production, and with pressure from Sony, they reluctantly agreed to grant her access to the editing bay for 2 days. Notably, despite her allegations that Baldoni made her uncomfortable, Lively insisted on working closely with him through this process. So there's a text from Justin to Blake here explaining what he's going to, what he's comfortable with in terms of her joining the edit. And it's a very different. Like, you can tell that he's trying to be more formal and more buttoned up. So he says, "Good morning, Blake. Blank and I had a great chat the other day, and he let me know you'd like to come into the edit before you leave for your film, and I think it's a great idea. I agree that we work really well together, and with all you've put into this film, I completely understand wanting to give notes and have input before you leave for your other movie. With that, I start my cut on Thursday, so tomorrow will be day 3. The movie is currently all over the place, and I need a few weeks to get it into some sort of shape to even present to you. What I would love to do is bring you in on the 18th and have us work together until you leave. Did I hear first week of April? Then, once you are in Italy, as things progress, you can jump in on any free days or even on days you have long wait in between scenes. I'm also happy to send you progress scenes, etc. with any big changes that are made. As we all know, things change all the time during a cut. For me, the editing process is the time to try things and throw it all against the wall to see what sticks. It's my favorite part of the process. So once you take off, we can just keep you in the loop and send you stuff to the extent you want to see as we get closer to locking picture. Thanks, Jay."
So she says, "Hey, thank you for the note. I appreciate it. I love to be in the passenger seat with you as soon as possible. I don't need you to formally present anything." It's just like he's just saying that to get you to back down, and you know it. But you are just, it's like when she said, oh, really? No one else has access to the dailies? So she says, I don't need you to formally present anything. I understand you've just seen the first assembly and have a mountain ahead of you. I'll be invaluable to you in recall alone as you put together what you're looking for. I've also been rewatching all the dailies. Tons of nuanced gems. Oh my gosh, even that is just like such a threat. Oh, really? You've been rewatching all the dailies, so you're gonna come in and just say exactly what is to be done.
Right. Also, it's just like she thinks she's so important in this. She has to be the person, his right hand person in the edit bay, reminding him of all the scenes that they have.
She says, the sooner we put our heads together, the better. Very excited to dive back into work. Let me know, B. So then he responds, hey, Blake, I hear you, and I do know how helpful you have been and will continue to be. I do need some time to get sorted with my editors and wrap my head around the film itself. I'll reach out to you at the end of the week to let you know the progress I have made so we can figure out the best time for you to start with me. Thank you. In February and March of 2024, Baldoni acceded to the request that Lively be let into the editing process. So then we have the text between him and his editors, which I think are so interesting and really point to how taken advantage of they all felt and how infringed upon.
Yeah.
So here's one that Justin says to one of his editors. He says, I've sat with it and I think the best path forward spiritually and what's best for the movie is that I suck it up and let her in. I've sent a message requesting that it start on the 18th. And until then, we should just let her in until she leaves. I'll let you guys know what she says. Thanks for being awesome. Dream team.
This is just another example of like the people who are actually supposed to be staffed on this and getting the work done, having to then spend their days like trying to mitigate her and trying to like just troubleshoot her involvement.
Right, exactly. It's like, I want to see the spreadsheet of It Ends With Us and the line item that's like managing Blake Lively's demands.
Yes.
How much work time was spent on that and money. So, and he says, I offered to let her join on the 18th. She replied she'd like to join now because she knows she will be invaluable to me as she knows every take. And then a director says, or one of the editors, says, oi. And the next one says, stick to it.
So later in March, Lively continues pushing for her demands. What had been a 2-day collaboration extended into 10, and Blake sought to work alone in the editing bay without Justin so that she would have full control. Though Justin incorporated 7 pages of her notes into his edit at the very start and consistently kept her involved in every subsequent edit, despite having absolutely no obligation to do so, Lively was not satisfied with merely collaborating with the director. She wanted to be the director and see her own creative vision for the film realized. I think as well, we have so many actors now who are actors turned directors, which makes sense. That
he's an actor-director.
Yeah, exactly. We have so many actor-directors, and I think that she saw this moment as, this is when I'm going to actually get to parlay this into my next big move as a director. And it just wasn't appropriate for her to do that with a film that already had a director.
Right.
Do that with another passion project. Find your own It Ends With Us and buy the rights and become the director of it.
I mean, she's Blake Lively. She could have absolutely bought the rights to another film and been the director if she wanted to be. I feel like it just goes beyond that. And it's more just about her personality disorder and her like willingness to just take over. It almost seems like less career ambition and more just like, it just reminds me of like Veruca Salt and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. She just wants everything and she wants it now.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's, for sure ego wrapped up in it, but like at best it was like her trying to further her own career development.
Right.
There's more text messages with the editing team. And I think we just see that Justin is steamrolled to the point where he is just fully like realizing that she's going to get her way. And, we see that they actually have 2 cuts of the movie and they decide to test both cuts because Blake has, strong-armed her way into the edit bay. She now has her own cut and Justin has his own cut. And so in some of these text messages, they start to talk about like how both of the cuts scored with the audience, which I think are interesting. So finally, in April and May, so a couple months later, Lively's extortionate threats coerce Sony to allow her to create her own cut of the film, a right that is exclusively reserved for directors. So it's just unprecedented. Sony's reasons for acquiescing to these beyond unreasonable demands were clear. Sony told Wayfair in no uncertain terms that Lively refused to promote the film unless her demands were met. Wayfair, feeling increasingly cornered into agreeing to Lively's demands, attempted to at least require that Lively finally sign her engagement contract if her demands were to be met. Even this basic ask was refused, and Sony urged Wayfair to give in.
I mean, who the fuck does Blake Lively think she is? I knew Blake Lively was in Gossip Girl and Sister of the Traveling Pants and like a shitty movie with Ben Affleck. But I didn't know that Sony would cower in her presence. It's really actually shocking to me, the power of Blake Lively.
I know. I need more details about it. And I just think that maybe it's the Ryan Reynolds of it all. Maybe they're just so powerful, so well connected. I don't know.
But it's like, you would think that even an A-list actress, if she says, hey, if I can't edit this film, I'm not going to promote it, I'm not going to do any of the marketing, you would think that would be a death knell to her career.
Right, exactly.
It makes Sony look so embarrassing.
No, totally.
And it's just such cowards.
So, still believing that in a sane and just world, despite Lively's continued extortion, an actress would never be allowed to usurp his legal right as a director to create and release his cut of the film. So he's like, okay, she's making her own cut. Yeah. That's not gonna be the film. Whatever. Let her have her way.
Let the 5-year-old play in the corner in the corner with her crayons, her set of crayons.
He assumed that Lively's edits would simply supplement his work. Thus, Baldoni continued refining his director's cut. But as Lively threatened to refuse to promote the film or approve any related marketing materials, trailers, posters, social media posts. So she's like being a bottleneck for all this other stuff because she's like, you either are going to approve and let me have my way, or I'm not going to do anything else. This movie's going to blow up in your face.
Right.
Because I'm not going to promote it, which they refer to as a doomsday scenario for this major motion picture. Wayfair and Baldoni were extorted into acquiescing to more and more demands. One of these was co-funding a friends and family screening of her version of the film, which they had not approved or even seen.
Okay, so it says Wayfair and Sony found themselves in the unprecedented and uncomfortable predicament of having two competing versions of the film, one made by the film's actual director and one made by a person with no contractual or creative right to even approach the editing bay, let alone make her own cut. But in light of Lively's threats to withhold promotion of the film, as well as her thinly veiled threat to end Baldoni's career with a slew of false accusations, the studio reluctantly agreed to do an official audience test of both versions, again at Wayfair and Sony's expense. This decision was made on the understanding that Lively had agreed with Sony that if Baldoni's director's cut tested higher, she would drop the matter and fully cooperate so that Baldoni could finish the film without further interference.
I mean, at this point, they're just like, fuck it. We need to like literally put this in the hands of strangers to make the decision because she won't listen to us. She won't. Also, it's worth noting that she replaced the film's editors with her own editors that were often used by Ryan Reynolds. And she replaced the film's award-winning composer with composers from Ryan's recent project, even though the composer had already finished the score.
Okay, so his version tests so much better than hers, like 20% higher, not 2 to 3%, 15 to 20% higher in almost every category. But not surprisingly, Lively reneged on her promise and insisted that her version be released to the public instead of Baldoni's cut as director, even claiming that the book's author, Colin Hoover, would refuse to promote the film as well if Lively's version was not chosen. Sony called to tell Wayfair that neither Lively nor any of the cast would promote the film unless Lively's cuts were used. Baldoni was forced to choose between killing the film and his own career by insisting on his own creative vision and rights, or putting out a version of the film that Baldoni knew could still be so important to domestic violence survivors, even if it differed greatly from what it could have been. Baldoni reluctantly chose the latter and stood down, allowing Lively's version of the film to be released and promoted. Justin was essentially forced to fire himself as director and allow Lively to finish the film, knowing it was the only choice he could make to serve the greater good. I want to chat with you about this really quick because my question is how Blake Lively was able to convince this entire cast, Colleen Hoover, to go against Justin Baldoni. My theory is that in Justin, the way she tried to lie to the public by creating these misrepresentations, I think she's bullshitting everyone else in her life. I think she's bullshitting Colleen. I think she's bullshitting Taylor.
Jenny Slate.
I think that she's lying to them. And she's saying that he sexually harassed her to them. Mm-hmm. I think privately she's maligning them. I also think that, there's a part of me that wonders if she's mischaracterizing things to Ryan. Yeah. Which is why he's flying off the handle. Yeah. You know?
I would kill to know what some of these actors are thinking right now. Like, where are they at with, do they feel duped? Are they like, finally everyone's seeing it?
Right. Or are they like, exactly. And I want to know where they're coming from the perspective of like, I want to be in the sequel. You know, I don't want Ryan and Blake. They're so powerful to hate me. So I'm going to go against Justin. Or were they, and I don't know, I guess I still believe in like, I think that it's really hard to get a lot of people to be so corrupt. I really, a few people maybe, but the entire cast, Colleen Hoover, I think she bullshitted everyone. That's my guess.
Yeah, I mean, that would not surprise me. That's kind of one of the only ways any of this makes sense.
I mean, why else is Gwyneth Paltrow promoting Blake Brown Beauty unless she was lied to?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that everyone, perhaps people were lied to. And then it was just like, all of these actors, she's the biggest actor in the film, hands down. So they're not going to go against the biggest fish in the pond, you know, and potentially killed all of their own careers if they're maybe a little skeptical of some things. I just think everyone was like, kept quiet.
Yeah.
Or looked, I don't know. Like, I just think everyone is like, and continues to be quiet about maybe their skepticism.
Yeah. Maybe it was just easier to believe what she was saying than to question Blake Lively. I mean, clearly this is a woman who is not to be defied.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe she's going to release another thing and we're going to have a lot more context to all this context. I don't know. I think then, you know, then it starts to be time to market the film and get the trailer and the posters, and Justin is just scrubbed from it all.
Yes, this is the part where he does not get a film by Justin Baldoni on the poster. He is not on the poster. It's just her. And yes, Justin is removed from the poster. He doesn't even get a film by Justin Baldoni written in text. She has taken over this movie and it's all about her.
Right.
And this is where we get to, he is asked to not attend the premiere alongside her. And this is where he sees that she has turned the entire cast against him.
Right.
None of the cast will promote it by his side.
Nobody follows him on Instagram anymore. What he starts to see is that this isn't over. That people are going to be able to read between the lines and think, why isn't she doing any press with her co-star? Why does all the cast not follow him on Instagram anymore? And it's that little tidbit we have about, you know, just leave them enough clues and people will be able to, you know, draw their own conclusions.
Yeah, it says in this that one of Lively's mega celebrity friends, you know, and we all believe that's Taylor, told her to just leave a few breadcrumbs for people to draw their own conclusions, but you don't have to say things outright. And that's exactly what she's doing. And you're right. This is where it's like he dealt with her tormenting him essentially and usurping this entire film. He deals with the wardrobe, just everything, nightmare from beginning to end, where
the film has been completely taken from him.
The film has been completely taken from him. And this is the point where it's like, no, not only will this film be taken from you, but I'm also going to malign you in the public.
Yeah, it's like all of this stuff could have happened and then we could just put a bow on it and never speak again.
Right.
And part as, you know, secret enemies.
Yes.
But this is like, no, I'm actually going to turn this into a public thing. And people are going to know that you messed up. And I'm going to tank your career.
Yeah, exactly. One of the text messages shown in the court documents are from the actress who played the young Lily. I think her name is Isabella Ferrer. And anyway, they're very sweet messages, like thanking him for being such a wonderful director. She says, I couldn't have asked for a more welcoming environment. This was her first role. There's just very effusive, nice messages. And he's very polite and professional in response. So it says, it was not until Ferrer spent substantial time with Lively during film promotions that Ferrer felt compelled to shun Baldoni in repudiation of her earlier warm messages. Right. So I've been wondering, why exactly was she wanting to go after him so early, right? Because the storm of bad press about the way she was promoting this had not happened yet. Yeah. Why is she already engaging in these hostile tactics?
Right. It feels premature.
Feels premature. And this is what the lawsuit says. It says, it became clear that Lively was laying the groundwork to explain away her theft of the film and exile of Baldoni. Presumably, she was concerned that her shocking conduct would be frowned upon if it became widely known. Baldoni had no intention of ever making this information public. In fact, as a co-star of the film, both he and his studio who co-financed the film and spent millions of dollars had every reason to want the film to succeed. Any suggestion of otherwise is illogical. Baldoni promoted the film as originally intended, gave her full credits and praise, and did everything in his power at every painful turn to make this film with Lively successful. He wanted to move on. Lively, however, could not let it go.
So she knew she misbehaved. Knew that it might not look good about not look good for her, and then decided to go nuclear. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it's like, no, we have to make him out to be the villain and the enemy.
Yeah.
And then everyone will understand why I had to basically save the film.
He was my harasser. I wasn't going to let him make this film about domestic violence.
Right.
Also, I think we need to just note the PGA thing, the PGA credit, because I think that just like, after we've gone through all of this, this has been such a long episode with so many like sizzling tidbits. The cherry on top, the insult to grave injury, okay, is that Blake Lively requests to get PGA producer credit. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit about this. This is a coveted mark on her producer credit. It's a certified designation licensed by the Producers Guild of America to identify producers who have performed the majority of the producing work on a motion picture. Neither Baldoni nor Wayfarer believed Lively fulfilled the requisite criteria to earn this mark, but that did not matter to Lively. Lively demanded, again with threats, that Baldoni, Heath, and other producers and department heads send letters to the PGA in support of her certification for the PGA mark. Despite unanimous recognition of the absurdity and unmistakably extortionate threats, Sony and other parties, despite being adamant not to support Lively's demand for the unentitled mark, ultimately acquiesced and submitted letters of support. So I think it's interesting here because they send a letter basically saying, like, we did this under duress.
Yes.
So
Don't
they
read
say,
part of that letter,
So
just
they
part of
say,
it.
so this is from Jamie Heath to a couple different people. He says, "Hi, everyone. I'm writing you all regarding a letter I wrote on behalf of Justin and myself addressed to the Producers Guild. As you know, we received a request to write a recommendation on behalf of Blake for her to receive the PGA mark. This was a request that we feel was unreasonable and cold-hearted. Essentially, the movie It Ends With Us has been taken unjustly from Justin as a director and essentially from Wayfarer's control due to the extortion of Blake. Without going into all the details and events that transpired over the months, Justin and I ended up agreeing to write the letter due to feeling trapped. She continues to hold a threat over our heads, and every time we try and hold a line, she uses that threat either directly or indirectly to get us to fold. Make no mistake, I am not suggesting that we were literally forced to acquiesce, but given the high profile of the movie, the partnership with Sony, the amount of money invested, and the need to complete the movie, we have written the letter on her behalf, omitting the truth of how and why she was able to contribute in the ways we listed. There is nothing to do with this letter now. It only serves as a way to memorialize why the letter was sent in the first place, should we ever need to explain it. Thank you, Jamie." It's pretty chilling.
It absolutely is. Another part of this that I think is very intriguing is Ryan Reynolds talking to an executive at WME. This was at the premiere of Deadpool and Wolverine. And he asked why they were working with a, quote, sexual predator, referring to Baldoni. This is where I do think she told everyone that he, like,
was creepy.
Yes. I think if he knows that Blake is histrionic, and she has to be managed and has these issues, he's kind of just going to deal with that. And maybe, like, if he's in cahoots with her, I don't think he's professionally going to talk to colleagues and be like, why are you representing the sexual predator? I think he believed that Justin was like a harasser.
So everyone is duped.
So I think she duped everyone.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, you guys. Anything else here? I mean, I feel completely exhausted by being duped by her.
So this is where we get to, he hires a crisis management firm because he realizes that she's turning the cast against him and it's going to look really bad. And he says, we know what she's capable of. Yeah. He needs to be defended.
It's just so funny because when I initially was reading those messages, I had no idea.
No, and he rightly needed to scenario plan, okay?
Yeah.
Because she clearly was going after his public image to defend her own bad behavior taking over this film. And essentially what happens is the public does turn against her, but it's not for the reasons she expects. It's for more bad behavior.
Right. It's for like lack of self-awareness.
Yes, and
tone deaf.
Being tone deaf, not reading the room, marketing this film in a very frothy, inappropriate way, this film about domestic violence, while trying to make money off her hair care brand that she launched to coincide with the premiere of this film. Also marketing her alcohol brand with a cocktail named after Ryle, the lead character, who was an abuser.
All of it just so deeply shows how little she cared about like what this film was actually about.
Yes. She didn't even read the book.
She didn't even read the book.
It's just all about me, 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 me. Here are my outfits. Here's my
boots.
Here are my sexy shoes. Buy my hair care products. Buy my alcohol brands. Grab your friends, wear your florals, line my pockets. Like, it's all just about her. Her bank account, her look, her
Right.
image, and it's not about domestic violence. And she reaps what she sows.
Yeah.
According to this, they scenario plan, but they don't engage in any tactics. The avalanche of bad press that comes down on her is entirely of her own making. And that's when she decides that she is going to go after Justin Baldoni
Yep.
and go public with all this sexual harassment stuff,
Right.
And these allegations in order to ruin his career.
And also sort of resurrect her image in the public eye.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And save herself. And she doesn't care about him, his family. She doesn't care about Wayfair, these people who put all this money into this. She doesn't care.
Well, and I think there's a very clear reason why why so many things with the New York Times happened the way they happened. Because it wasn't about actually going to court and getting justice.
Yeah.
It was about just literally the court of public opinion.
Yes.
So what's the way to do that? You go to the New York Times, you make the complaint not behind a paywall so everyone can download it. You give this information as much of a platform as you can.
Yes, exactly. To try to exonerate yourself. And it didn't work. And everyone saw through it except us at the beginning.
Well, I mean, I think in our defense, I think
we
her
just-
complaint was startling.
Yes, and we didn't know she was just gonna outright boldface lie.
Right. I think we didn't. I don't know. I just don't believe most people are liars.
This has been a very long episode. I do believe this case is just getting started on some
know.
level because they are going to trial. So you guys, of course, we are going to be there with you.
Yes.
I just want to say that I'm sorry to Justin Baldoni for any unfair disparagement of him on this podcast, just taking Blake's words for, as truth, as written in good faith, assuming that she wasn't just outright lying. Like, having read through this, I do feel like I'm Team Justin.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sorry.
No, I'll echo that same thing. I mean, I think that we were duped.
Yeah. We are like Ramona Singer. We are a work in progress over here. Okay. But we're never going to stop working.
No, absolutely not. And I think hopefully this episode can, help people make their own conclusions,
Yes.
give people more information to, decide how they feel about this. And, yeah.
If anyone wants to call us a Mitt Romney,
Flip-flopper?
go
Fine,
for it.
Go for it. I mean, honestly, I'm okay with being called a flip-flopper because it's all about just getting new information, being self-aware, and, moving on.
We're just like the COVID-19 panel. Like, our thoughts evolve as we receive new information.
So true. So true.
Okay. And
You guys, we've been recording about this for 4 hours.
we also started recording this, you guys, and then realized we were doing it from our home studio, that one of the actual microphone thing had died. And so we had to restart a big portion
I feel
of
like
this.
I'm delirious. So anyway, love and light.
But wait.
What?
But wait. We have to get into it. No, I'm just kidding. Wait, everyone. You have to join Premium or get excited for a Premium episode on Friday because we are getting into the Vanity Fair article about Meghan Markle.
Yes.
There is so much good stuff to get into other than Blake and Justin. We are getting into Maddie Healy about Taylor Swift. You guys, this is a big week in pop culture and we are covering it all. Premium episode on Friday is going to be off the chain.
Off the chain. It's
I
going to
don't
be
know what that
incredible.
means.
Anyway, everyone, thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.
Love you guys. Bye. Or we'll chat with you on Friday.
Bye.